I'm Rahul, and I'm from Akipio Learning. We provide live online education in the secondary sector in the country today. I have two questions for you, and essentially seeking your vision because you have a broad spectrum there. First thing is, secondary education in the country is dominated by the state sector here. How do you see the changes which are likely to come and aligning ourselves in the new wave of digital world? How do you see that prospering in 5 to 10 years? What's your vision on that? And secondly, internet is a great enabler. It has opened doors, but as we now see that it has been classified as the 5th domain, we have already divided sea, land, air, and space. And the movement is already there. China with Google, Russia, we are seeing that division now emerging. Now, in the case of higher education, maths, these are pure sciences. That's fine. They're not politically motivated. But if you go to other education, in the higher education, other subjects, there is history which is so tightly controlled with what is taught to the children in a particular country. Now, or to the people. Now, how are we, or what do you think would be our approach? At one time, we are opening doors, and the second, the countries and politicians will be breaking this and putting tight doors on the education. So how should we respond as educationists to that?
Well, there's nothing new about governments trying to control education. In fact, one of the great roles a good friend of mine once described to me of higher education is to create tension in society, because higher education has been about challenging. It's been about confronting. It's been about drawing attention to things that others may not want attention to drawn to. So to answer your second question first, I think that higher education, the combination of higher education and technology, the proliferation of the internet, the democratization of content will actually make control a fairly foolhardy exercise, actually. I honestly believe that the horse is out of the barn, the rabbit is out of the hat, Pandora's box has been opened, use whichever quaint expression you want. But to try to artificially hold that back, it may work in the short term, but it will find a way, because look at your satellite television now. You can hook up a satellite dish and get downloads of content from just about anywhere in the world if you point at the right satellite, and that's a fairly it's a fairly rigid architecture compared to what the web is. So I'm not so worried about that. I think that, but what I am optimistic is the technology now creates our ability to get information just about anywhere on the planet where there's connectivity, and that actually I think is a very positive thing for society. I think your first question was about the privatization of secondary education. Is that correct?
Not just the privatization. How do you see the secondary education? The structures breaking down, the evolution of the entire the content itself, the mode or methods, channels of communication.
So how do I see the change in pace of secondary education? I think what we're going to see and what we're already seeing is that those that engineer a good system, I touched on it before, are those that are thinking deeply early about how do you seamlessly move people from secondary into further education, whatever further education looks like, and being able to let people speed up and slow down at the pace that they need to, and let people move in and move out as they need to. And again, all of the stuff that I talked about, the digital natives, the net generation, is actually just totally applicable in secondary education as well. Everything I've talked about is really, from at least the research I've been involved in, is now 13 years plus is what I'm talking about. And so those same phenomena that I talked about for higher education, I think are taking place in secondary education. The crisis, though, is perhaps much more pronounced, because we've got generations of young people checking out because they just can't relate to the environment that they're in. And when I talk to secondary teachers and I talk to them about their biggest challenges, the words I often get used are, it's so hard to cut through the noise, because these people are coming in so hyper-stimulated, connected, sharing, digital, and suddenly we're dropping them into these analog environments where we're more and more using standardized testing as a way of measuring success, that I think we've got a real problem on our hands. The flip side is technology can be incredibly liberating in secondary education. Very quick story, very quick story. Sitting at my work at Microsoft, doing email, that's all we do at Microsoft, email. And my wife is at home reading news on the computer. All of a sudden, an email arrives into both of our email boxes at the same time from my daughter Maddie's teacher, to mum and dad copying daughter. Sorry, actually, it was to daughter copying mum and dad. Dear Maddie, sorry we missed you at the math catch-up at lunchtime today. Oh, I've opened the email and go, this will be interesting. So, within 10 minutes, actually 5 minutes, message from mother to teacher, copying daughter and father. We'll be sure to talk to Madison about this when she gets home tonight. Within another 5 minutes, message from daughter to teacher, copying mum and dad. Profuse apologies, never happen again, I'll make sure I'm there from that point onwards. Now, that all got done within about 15 minutes. We were in the real time in the life of our daughter in school, interacting with the teacher, correcting problems using a really complicated piece of technology called email.
And Bill Gates was paying you all the time.
Yes, that's right. Now, the flip side of that story, though, is that in that same environment, I was sitting there one day, an email popped into my inbox from my daughter's English teacher, copying my daughter, saying, Martin, I just want you to know what a fantastic job your daughter did with her oral presentation today. I was able, within 5 minutes, to whip up a note to my daughter, copying her teacher and her mother, saying, great job. And when I walked in the back door that night, I knew to give her a big hug because she'd done well at school that day. Isn't that the sort of world we would like to imagine in secondary education? Isn't that the sort of world that we need for active, busy, working parents to get into their lives? Because most parents, it's not that they don't want to get into their lives of their kids at school, they just don't know how. And that we talked about maths before. We had a thing called Microsoft Maths, which was all about helping people learn maths in school, when we thought our target audience would be students. Who do you think our target audience turned out to be? Parents. Because a parent could sit in the kitchen and a kid could go, can you help me with this problem? And I've done this, don't tell my daughter. And you go, oh yeah, copy it down. Maddie, let me go away and think about that for a sec. Race into study, pump the formula into Microsoft Math, spit out not just the answer, but how I got there, back into the kitchen. Sure, sweetie. Let me show you how we do this math problem. And there's just a few examples for you, though, of the way technology can solve some of our biggest issues in secondary education. Because a lack of active involvement of parents in the education of their children at a primary and secondary level is a primary determinant of failure and success. Hope that wasn't too long-winded, sorry. I know we're